Hey there, it's Lauren with Gear Cleaning Solutions. In this video, we're going to learn how to do an advanced inspection of the coat. The coat consists of 3 protective elements: an outer shell, a thermal liner, and a moisture barrier. Each of these will be inspected separately, so you'll need to separate the outer shell from the liner system before you begin. And in this video, we're only going to be inspecting the outer shell of the coat. Before we begin, we need to make sure the coat is clean. According to the standard, the way we check this is by doing the soil transfer test. To perform the soil transfer test, you'll take a piece of white paper and rub it on the coat. If the paper stays white and nothing is transferred from the coat, that qualifies as clean. If any contamination or dirt transfers onto the paper, the coat is soiled and cannot be inspected until it's clean. Test a few different spots on the coat to be sure the coat is not contaminated. Once you ensure the coat is clean, you can begin the advanced inspection. Key components of the advanced inspection for the outer shell of the coat include physical damage, damaged trim, damaged closures and hardware, fit and overlap of coat with the pants, seam integrity including broken or missing stitches, material integrity for loss of strength due to UV, chemical exposure, or high heat exposure, wristlet integrity and functionality, reflectivity of trim and Velcro integrity, label integrity and legibility, liner attachment system, closure system functionality, accessory compliance, and correct assembly and size compatibility of shell, liner, and DRD. When inspecting the coat, you want to make sure you take a systematic approach. Lay the coat flat on its back, start at one sleeve, work your way up the sleeve and across the front of the coat, and down the other sleeve. Then flip the coat over and take the same approach on the back side. This will ensure that you cover all areas of the coat. Let's start with the wristlet. Make sure the elasticity is intact. Check for any physical damage such as fraying, rips, tears, or cuts, and check that it's securely attached to the sleeve. Then flip the sleeve inside out to check the water well. The water well creates a cup inside the sleeve to prevent water, steam, or debris from getting down into the arm of the coat. Check the seam area where it's sewn into the cup and the wristlet. Make sure there are no rips, tears, or cuts. Check the neoprene or installed material to be sure it's not brittle, peeling, or degrading. Also look for burns or discoloration that would indicate that the material is compromised. Next, we'll move to the cuff. Check the seams for any missing stitches, rips, tears, cuts, holes, or abrasions. Check the trim. Be sure the seams on the trim are intact and sewn on tightly. Work your way up the major A seam. Tug on it to make sure it's still strong. Work your way over to the material on the sleeve. Look for any discoloration where the material has had the dye bleed out of it. In high heat exposure, the color can bleed out of the fabric. This process is called dye sublimation. If you find any of those areas, pull forcefully to see if you can rip the material. If you can't push through or tear the material, then no repair is needed for that particular area. Keep working your way up. Make sure the seams are good in the armpit and around the shoulder. Then move down to the front of the coat. Check the overall condition of the trim and make sure the seams are strong and intact. If there are areas on the trim that appear to have lost reflectivity, be sure to test the reflectivity with a trim checker or a flashlight. On the front of the coat, you're required to have 2 positive closures for your storm flap. On this particular coat, the Velcro would be an example of 1 positive closure and hooks and D's would be the second positive closure. Check the Velcro for any excessive fraying and make sure it's not lifting or detaching on the sides. Then check its functionality to be sure it is still attaching to the opposite side properly. Next, check the second positive closure to ensure the hooks are still properly latching to the D's. Check that all the rivets are there and that there is no damage to the hardware. Make sure they have their strength and that they are in good overall condition. Check for any corrosion or physical damage. Then move over to the seam inside the flap. Check that it's securely attached with no missing stitches. Next, work your way around the bottom of the coat. Check the reflectivity of the trim, make sure the seam is good and the stitching is intact. Look at the overall material for any physical damage like cuts, tears, rips, and abrasions. And check for high heat, thermal damage areas where it's charred or discolored. If you identify any of those areas, you'll need to check the integrity of the material. Work your way back up and check the pockets. Check the integrity of the material. Make sure the Velcro adheres to itself, snaps closed properly, or whichever closure function comes with your coat, check that it's functioning properly. Damage to the overall base layer of the outer shell is what would deem it non-compliant. Continue checking the seams and the trim. Check the radio pocket and mic tab to be sure it's intact. If seams are broken, make sure there are no holes or any other damage that's affecting the base layer of the coat. Then check the throat area. Make sure the positive closures are intact and that they close properly. Next, we'll work our way down the other sleeve. Lay it out to where you can see the material clearly. Check the overall condition of the material, check the seam integrity on the sides and on the trim, and check the overall condition of the cuff. Work your way into the other water well. Make sure the material in the water well is in good condition and that the stitches are all intact. Lastly, for the front side, check the wristlet. Look for physical damage, missing stitches, holes, fraying, and loss of elasticity. Let's flip the jacket over and lay it flat so you can inspect the back side. Continue the same process as the front, starting with the cuff. Look at the material installed on the cuff to make sure it's not ripped, torn, or brittle. Check the trim, look at the seam integrity, and check the overall condition of the material. Look for any physical damages, missing stitches, holes, rips, abrasions, or discoloration. If there are little snags, make sure they don't show all the way through. If it does, then it needs to be repaired. Work your way across, checking all of the stitching and material integrity. Check the DRD access port. Make sure the Velcro is intact and that you can access the drag rescue device. Different coats have different integrations into the DRD. You can see on this particular coat, a tab is used. For whichever integration your coat uses, be sure it's intact and still functioning properly. Then check the overall material integrity of the jacket. Look for rips, cuts, tears, abrasions, and any dye sublimation or charring. Look at the condition of the seams. Check that there are no missing or broken stitches. And check the overall condition of the trim, its fluorescence, and the reflectivity. Then work your way down the rest of the coat. Check the trim on the second layer for any damages. Let's flip the coat back over so we can check the inside. Check the liner attachment systems. Look at all of the snaps and Velcro if this is what is installed on your coat. The liner snaps in and then Velcros across the top of the neck and then snaps in on the other side. Your attachment system will depend on the gear manufacturer. Some coats have a zipper all the way across, some have Velcro all the way across, and several other types of attachments. Whichever type your coat has, make sure it is attached securely and functions properly. Check the overall condition of the DRD. Look for rips, tears, cuts, and abrasions. Also check the label of the DRD. The serial number of the DRD must match the serial number of the coat. The size of the DRD should also match up with the size of the coat. Lastly, make sure there is a label. The coat will come with a label attached to the liner and one attached to the shell. At minimum, at least one of the two labels must be present in order to identify the gear. If one of the labels gets damaged, make sure the other one is still intact and legible. It should have a serial number, a manufacturer date that is less than 10 years old, and the overall appearance must be intact and legible, clearly showing the proper NFPA certification information. Once you've completed the inspection, go over the checklist one more time to make sure you cover the entire outer shell. Look for physical damage, damaged trim, damaged closures and hardware, fit and coat pant overlap, seam integrity including broken or missing stitches, material integrity for loss of strength due to UV, chemical exposure or high heat exposure, wristlet integrity and functionality, reflectivity of trim and Velcro integrity, attachment and functionality, label integrity and legibility, liner attachment system, closure system functionality, accessory compliance, and correct assembly and size compatibility of shell, liner, and DRD. And that completes the advanced inspection of the outer shell of the coat.